I'm Reverend Mateo Alvarez, a gay pastor and licensed clinical social worker, and for 15 years I carried a secret that nearly killed me. I never believed those near-death experience stories, the ones where people claimed to see Jesus and come back changed. I thought they were comforting fantasies, psychological defense mechanisms my training taught me to analyze and explain away. Until the night I died, and Jesus told me the one thing the church has been lying about for 2,000 years. My story doesn't start with my death. It starts with the slow collapse that led me there. I grew up in a Puerto Rican Pentecostal home, where the presence of God was as real as the coqui frogs singing outside our windows. My mother prayed in tongues over breakfast. My father led worship with a voice that could shake the rafters. And I knew from the time I was 7 years old that I was called to serve God and that I was different from the other boys. By the time I entered seminary, I had become an expert at compartmentalization. I excelled in systematic theology, pastoral counseling, homiletics. I learned to preach with my father's passion and pray with my mother's faith. I also learned to bury the part of myself that didn't fit the mold, the part that noticed other men, the part that felt desire the church told me was an abomination. After ordination, I threw myself into ministry with an intensity that bordered on mania. I started a community outreach program for at-risk youth. I counseled families through crisis. I preached sermons that brought people to tears and to the altar. And I pursued a master's degree in clinical social work because I wanted to help people heal, not just spiritually, but holistically. On the outside, I was thriving. Inside, I was dying by inches. The cognitive dissonance became unbearable. How could I counsel LGBTQ+ youth struggling with suicidal ideation while hiding my own truth? How could I preach about God's unconditional love while believing I was fundamentally unlovable? I started having panic attacks during worship services. The praise songs that once filled me with joy now felt like accusations. Every sermon I preached felt like a performance, a lie wrapped in scripture. I came out when I was 32, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't not anymore. The fallout was catastrophic. My church asked me to step down. Half my family stopped speaking to me. The Christian counseling center where I worked terminated my contract. In the span of 6 months, I lost my pulpit, my community, and nearly lost my faith. But I didn't lose my calling. I found a progressive denomination that affirmed LGBTQ+ clergy. I started a new ministry focused on spiritual trauma survivors, people who had been wounded by the very institutions meant to offer them healing. I reopened my practice, specializing in faith-based trauma therapy. I rebuilt my life on a foundation of authenticity instead of performance. And I worked myself into the ground, trying to prove I deserved to exist. 70-hour work weeks became my new normal. I saw clients back to back, squeezing in supervision calls during lunch breaks I rarely took. I preached on Sundays, led support groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays, taught workshops on spiritual resilience on Saturdays. I said yes to every speaking engagement, every consultation request, every person who needed help. Because if I could save enough people, help enough people, serve enough people, maybe I could finally silence the voice in my head that whispered I was an abomination. My partner Miguel noticed the signs before I did. The weight loss, the insomnia, the way I'd zone out mid-conversation, my mind already racing to the next crisis I needed to solve. He begged me to slow down, to see a doctor, to take a sabbatical. I told him I was fine. I told him the work was too important. I told him I couldn't let people down. I didn't realize I was already letting myself down. The night it happened, I had just finished leading a 3-hour workshop on compassion fatigue for other pastors and therapists. The irony wasn't lost on me later. I came home exhausted, my chest tight with what I assumed was stress. Miguel was already asleep. I didn't want to wake him, so I went to our home office to finish some case notes. That's when the pain hit. It wasn't like the movies. There was no dramatic clutching of the chest, no cinematic fall to the ground. It was more like someone had reached inside my ribcage and started squeezing my heart with both hands. The room tilted. My vision narrowed to a tunnel. I tried to call out for Miguel, but my voice came out as a whisper. I managed to pull my phone from my pocket. My fingers felt thick and clumsy as I dialed 911. I remember giving our address. I remember the dispatcher's calm voice telling me help was on the way, asking me to stay on the line. I remember Miguel's footsteps thundering down the hallway, his face white with terror as he found me collapsed against the desk. Then I remember the paramedics, the oxygen mask, the jolt of the ambulance hitting a pothole. Miguel's hand gripping mine so tight I thought he might break my fingers. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room burning into my retinas, voices sharp with urgency. Someone cutting away my shirt. The cold gel of EKG leads on my chest. A doctor's face appeared above me, young and serious. "Mateo, you're having a massive myocardial infarction. We need to get you into surgery now. Do you understand?" I nodded. Miguel was crying. I wanted to tell him I loved him, but the words got stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth. They wheeled me down a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. The ceiling tiles blurred into a white river above me. I heard someone say my blood pressure was dropping. I felt the prick of another IV going into my other arm. Someone squeezed a bag, forcing fluid into my veins. And then, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, everything stopped. The pain vanished. The noise cut off like someone had hit a mute button on the universe. The bright lights dimmed. I felt myself lifting, separating from the weight of my body like a deep breath finally released after being held too long. I was above the operating table looking down at myself. My body looked small and broken, chest cracked open, a team of surgeons working with desperate precision. I could see every detail with impossible clarity. The steady drip of the IV bag, the monitor showing a flat line, Miguel visible through a window, his face buried in his hands. I should have been terrified. I should have been fighting to get back. But all I felt was peace. A silence so complete, it was almost a presence of its own. Then I wasn't in the operating room anymore. I was standing in a place that defied description. Not heaven as I'd imagined it from Sunday school flannel boards, not clouds and harps and pearly gates. It was more like standing inside light itself. The air, if it was air, shimmered with presence. I could feel it on my skin, warm and alive and utterly aware. And I was not alone. He was there. I didn't see him at first. I felt him, a presence so vast and intimate at the same time that my mind couldn't fully contain it. When I finally turned and saw him, it wasn't the Jesus from the paintings in my childhood church. No European features, no flowing robes. He appeared to me as I needed to see him, brown skin, kind eyes, a carpenter's hands that bore scars I recognized. He smiled at me, and in that smile I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt seen, fully known and fully loved in the same breath. "Mateo," he said, and his voice was like coming home. I fell to my knees, not because I thought I should, because my legs couldn't hold me anymore under the weight of being so completely known. "You've been running?" he said gently. The truth of it hit me like a wave. I had been running from my pain, running from my questions, running from rest, running toward exhaustion, as if it were a finish line that would finally prove my worth. I whispered, I thought if I worked hard enough, if I helped enough people, maybe I could make up for being. I couldn't finish the sentence. "For being exactly who I made you to be?" he asked. And that's when I broke. 15 years of holding myself together. 15 years of performing and proving and pushing. It all came undone in the presence of the one I'd spent my whole life trying to please. He knelt beside me, and he did something I never expected. He wept. "Do you know," he said, his voice thick with grief, "how many of my beloved children have killed themselves trying to earn what I've already freely given?" I looked up at him, tears streaming down my face. "My church," he continued, and there was a weight in those two words I'd never heard before. "My church has taught you that my love must be earned, that my acceptance is conditional, that some part of how I made you is a mistake to be overcome." He took my face in his scarred hands. "Mateo, I'm going to show you 3 things. 3 truths that the church has buried under centuries of fear and control and misunderstanding. And I need you to go back and tell people what you've seen." My heart, or whatever I had in that place beyond my body, began to race. "The first truth," he said, "is this. You have spent your entire life trying to perform your way into my love, working, serving, proving, exhausting yourself, trying to earn what I've been offering you freely since before you took your first breath. My love isn't a wage you earn, it's a gift you receive." He opened his hands, and I saw something impossible. I saw every moment of my life, not just the big moments. Every ordinary Tuesday, every quiet morning, every time I'd felt inadequate or broken or wrong. And over every single moment, like a light that never dimmed, was his presence. His love, unchanged by my success or failure, unaffected by my doubt or certainty, just there, always there. "But the church told me," I started. "I know what they told you," he said, and there was sorrow in his voice. "They've told millions of my children that they must work for what I've already given. They've built systems of performance and shame and conditional belonging. And it's killing you. It's killing all of you." He stood and pulled me to my feet. "The second thing I want to show you," he said, "has to do with the sin the church has condemned you for. The identity they've told you is incompatible with my love." My breath caught. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and longing for my entire life. The moment Jesus would finally tell me the truth about who I was and whether I was acceptable to him. But he didn't continue. Not yet. A horizon that seemed to shimmer between this realm and another. "Before I show you this," he said, "I need you to understand something. What you're about to see will challenge everything the church has taught you. It will require you to choose between the religious systems that have claimed to speak for me and the truth I'm about to reveal." He turned back to me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you ready to see the biggest lie the church has been teaching about sin?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be brave enough to handle whatever truth he was about to show me. But I also felt a tremor of fear. Because if he was about to overturn everything I'd been taught, everything I'd struggled with, everything I'd lost and rebuilt my life around, what would be left? He must have seen the fear in my eyes because he reached out and took my hand. "You won't face this alone," he said. "And when you go back, and you will go back, Matteo, you won't carry this message alone either. There are others. Others who've been wounded by the same lie. Others who are ready to hear the truth. The third thing," he said, and his voice took on a quality I can only describe as eternal, "will explain why this lie has persisted for so long. Why good people, people who genuinely love me, have kept perpetuating teachings that crush my children's spirits." He paused, and in that pause I felt the weight of centuries, of councils and creeds and condemnation, of people like me who'd stood at the intersection of their faith and their identity and been told they couldn't have both. "But first," he said, "you need to see what the church has gotten wrong about the very nature of sin itself." The light around us began to shift. I felt myself being drawn toward something, a revelation that seemed to pulse just beyond the edge of my perception. And then I heard it. Voices, Miguel's voice, broken and pleading. "Come back to me, Matteo, please come back." The beep of a heart monitor, erratic and weak, but there. I looked at Jesus, panic rising in my chest. "I'm not ready. I haven't seen everything yet. I don't understand." He smiled, sad and knowing. "You will. I'm sending you back with what you need. The rest will unfold as you're ready to receive it." "But the lie," I said desperately. "The thing about sin, the reason the church has condemned people like me. I need to know." "You will know," he promised. "Hold on to this, Matteo. Hold on to what I'm about to tell you, and when you wake up, you'll remember everything." He leaned close and he spoke one sentence into my ear. 7 words that would change everything I thought I knew about sin, sexuality, and the gospel itself. 7 words I'm about to share with you. But first, you need to understand how I got from that moment with Jesus back to the hospital room where Miguel was still praying. You need to know what happened in the space between that revelation and my return to life. Because what Jesus showed me in those final moments, the full picture of what the church has been hiding, is impossible to understand without seeing the journey that brought me there. I felt myself being pulled backward, like a tide going out. Jesus' face began to fade, but his words remained, burning in my mind with a clarity that felt permanent. The light dimmed. The peace began to recede, replaced by a growing awareness of my body. Pain hit me like a freight train. My chest felt like it had been cracked open, which it had. Every breath was agony, every heartbeat a small violence. I heard shouting, urgent and close. "We've got him back. Vitals are stabilizing." I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw from the intubation tube they'd had down it. All I could do was hold on to those 7 words. The thing Jesus told me about sin, the lie the church has been teaching, the truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew and rebuild it into something truer, more beautiful, more aligned with the heart of God than anything I'd encountered in seminary or scripture study or a lifetime of religious performance. That phrase, "Love is the only commandment that matters." It kept echoing in my mind as I stood there in that presence. The warmth I felt wasn't just comforting, it was undoing something deep inside me, something I'd carried for years. Remember, there were 3 things Jesus said he wanted to show me. 3 revelations about the lies I'd been taught. We covered the first 2 in our encounter, but this third one, this was the one that would change everything. I need you to understand something before I share it with you. For my entire life, I had been told that who I am, at my core, was fundamentally broken. That my orientation, my love for another man, was evidence of my depravity. That God loved me despite this terrible flaw. And that true faith meant constantly fighting against the very person I am. I believed it. God, I believed it so deeply. I spent decades in that tension, praying for change, fasting, undergoing conversion therapy. I married a woman I cared for, but could never love the way she deserved. I built a ministry. I counseled others. I preached about purity and sacrifice and denying the flesh. And the whole time, there was this knot in my chest, this constant awareness that I was performing a version of faith that required me to hate a fundamental part of myself. The exhaustion of it was crushing. And now here I was, standing before Jesus himself, terrified that he was about to confirm what I'd always feared. That I had failed, that despite all my efforts, all my service, all my sacrifice, I was still that broken thing the church had warned me about. But then he spoke, and what he said shattered everything. "Matteo," he said, and his voice was so gentle I almost wept. "The greatest lie they told you is this, that your love makes you sinful, that who you are is incompatible with who I am." I felt my chest tighten. This was it, the moment of judgment. But he continued, "I did not create you broken. I created you beloved. Your capacity to love another man is not a flaw to be fixed. It is part of how I made you. And I made you good." I couldn't process it at first. The words didn't make sense with everything I'd been taught. With decades of sermons and scripture interpretations and theological arguments I'd memorized and repeated. "But the Bible," I stammered. "The passages, the condemnations, I've read them. I've preached them." "You've read interpretations," he said. "Translations filtered through centuries of human fear and power structures and cultural assumptions. But I am here now speaking directly to you. Do you trust what you've been told about me, or do you trust me?" And right there, friends, that's the moment. That's the binary choice I had to make. Do I trust the religious system I'd devoted my life to, or do I trust the actual presence of the one that system claims to represent? Before I answer, let me ask you to do something. If this is resonating with you, if something inside you is stirring, I want you to leave a comment below. Just tell me where you're watching from, or share one word that describes what you're feeling right now, because I need you to process this with me. I need you to engage with what I'm about to tell you, because it changed the entire trajectory of my life and ministry. Okay, back to that moment. I chose to trust him. "I trust you," I whispered. And then he showed me something. It was like a vision within the vision. I saw myself as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting in church. I remembered that day. The pastor was preaching about sin, and he mentioned homosexuality, and even at that age, something inside me recognized he's talking about me. I watched that little boy shrink. I watched shame settle over him like a blanket. I watched him make a decision in that moment to hide, to perform, to become someone acceptable. And I watched Jesus walk over to that little boy. He knelt down beside him, and he whispered, "I made you exactly as you are, and you are mine. You are loved. You are enough." That little boy looked up at him with such hope, such desperate hunger to believe it was true. And then the vision shifted. I saw myself at 16, at 25, at 38. I saw every moment I tried to pray away the gay. Every moment I'd stood in front of a congregation preaching purity while dying inside. Every moment I'd counseled someone else to deny who they were because I had denied myself. I saw all of it, and Jesus stood beside me through every single scene. "You were never broken," he said. "You were taught to believe you were. But Matteo, listen to me. Your identity is not your sin. Your love is not your sin. Sin is when you harm yourself or others. Sin is when you choose power over compassion, judgment over mercy, performance over authenticity. Sin," he continued, "is when you twist my message of unconditional love into a weapon of exclusion and shame. That is what grieves me, not your orientation, not your love." I was weeping now. Decades of shame, of self-hatred, of exhausting performance, all of it was crumbling. "But what do I do now?" I asked. "Everything I've built, my ministry, my reputation, my marriage, it's all based on the lie. What do I do?" "You tell the truth," he said simply. "You go back and you tell them what I've shown you. You love authentically. You minister from wholeness, not from woundedness. You let people see that my grace is not something you earn through denial and performance. It's something you receive by accepting that you are already loved, already accepted, already mine. And some of them will hate you for it," he added, and there was such sorrow in his voice. "They'll say you've fallen away. They'll call you deceived. They'll use my name to condemn you. But Matteo, I need you to stand firm in what I've told you here. Because there are so many others, so many children sitting in pews right now, believing the same lie you believed. And they need to hear the truth." I don't know how long I stood there letting that sink in. Time felt strange in that space. But eventually, I felt myself being pulled back. The light began to dim. The presence began to fade. "Wait," I called out. "I don't want to go back. I don't want to face what's coming." "I know," he said. "But you're not going back alone. I go with you, always." And then I was in my body again. The hospital room, the beeping monitors, the fluorescent lights. My partner holding my hand, his face wet with tears. "Matteo," he whispered, "you're back. Oh God, you're back." I looked at him, this man I'd kept at arm's length for years, this man I'd loved, but never allowed myself to fully love because I was so busy performing straightness and righteousness and acceptability. And for the first time in my life, I let myself love him without shame. "I'm back," I said, "and everything's different now." It took me weeks to fully process what happened. During those minutes, I was clinically dead. Weeks to integrate the revelations, to sort through the implications, to figure out what obedience to Jesus actually looks like when you've been taught a version of obedience that requires self-denial. But here's what I know now, with absolute certainty. The number one lie the church teaches is that your identity can be sinful, that who you are at your core can be an abomination, that God's love is conditional on you, changing something fundamental about yourself. That is not the gospel Jesus preached. That is not the message of grace. Jesus told me directly that he created me as I am, that my capacity to love is not a flaw, that sin is about harm and choice and the misuse of power, not about the fundamental orientation of your heart. And friends, this applies to so much more than sexuality. This applies to every way the church has weaponized shame. Every way we've been taught that we are too much or not enough or fundamentally flawed in ways that disqualify us from full belonging. That's the lie, all of it. The truth is this: you are created, you are beloved, you are enough. God's love is not something you earn. It's something you receive by accepting that you already have it. My ministry looks completely different now. I came out. I lost my church position. I lost relationships. I lost the version of myself I'd performed for decades. But I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained authenticity. I gained wholeness. I gained the ability to minister from a place of actually believing the grace I preach. And the people who come to me now, they're not coming to learn how to perform righteousness. They're coming to learn how to receive love, how to heal from religious trauma, how to reconcile their faith with their identity. That's the work Jesus called me to in that moment between life and death. Not to preach a gospel of shame and denial, but to proclaim a gospel of radical acceptance and authentic love. So here's my question for you. Wherever you are right now, what lie have you been told about yourself? What part of you have you been taught to hide or fix or deny in order to be acceptable to God? I want you to know, from someone who met Jesus face to face and heard him speak directly, that lie is not from him. The shame is not from him. The performance is not from him. He made you. He loves you. You are already his. The only commandment that matters is love. Love God, love others, love yourself. Not performance, not perfection. Not denial, just love. Authentic, whole, unashamed love. If this testimony has impacted you, I want to invite you to do two things. First, subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this, more testimonies of people who've encountered divine truth that challenges religious systems. You need to hear them. Click that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Second, there's another video I want you to watch. It's a testimony from someone who experienced something similar, a revelation that challenged everything they'd been taught about God's love and acceptance. I'll link it at the end of this video. Watch it next. Let these truths build on each other. And finally, if you're struggling right now, if you're in that place I was in, performing faith while dying inside, please hear me. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are beloved. The lie they told you is not the truth. Jesus' message is love, not shame. Acceptance, not performance. Wholeness, not denial. Go and live from that truth and watch how everything changes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.